Welcome, everybody. This is Co.Lab Fellowship Demo Day, the first of its kind. The Co.Lab has been our baby for the last 3 months, which we have started also with the help of ArbitrumDAO. And it's a different kind of demo day because it's not startups, but it's actually research, which might very well lead to a venture, but we focused on doing research as a foundation for what is next to come. And we are RnDAO, and we believe in that the future of work is about swarms. And this is also how we have organized this kind of accelerator fellowship, whatever you want to call it. The people behind Co.Lab have been mainly, amongst many others, Drea, who is here. We will see her sharing a little bit later. Lino, who has also just arrived, and myself, Yatan, who is here with the dog face, because why not? So RnDAO, well, actually, first, I am Yatan. My background is doing a lot of startup support across the years in hardware, mobility space, now Web3, so in different spaces, a little bit of startupping as well. And my focus has really been over the years, how do you help startups, founders, fellows to get as far as possible with as little time as possible, having touch points. So how do you provide the right contacts, the right skills that they can reuse to become the entrepreneurs that they want to become? And here in this context, RnDAO, we believe in research first. We are a venture studio, so we help build ventures in different ways. And we do this in the field of collab tech or collaboration technology. So tell us a little bit more about why Co.Lab? Lino.
Yay, indeed, why Co.Lab? Well, blockchain as a movement and technology is incredibly exciting, but it needs use cases. And a lot of the real work is going to happen on layer 2s. But if we look at the Ethereum ecosystem, there's like just on L2Bit 47 tracked, and they are all competing from the same builders on top of the other ones. They need differentiation and defensibility. One of the great ways to do that is by creating very complementary and vibrant innovation clusters within these economies. And yes, my name is Lino. Besides being a founder of multiple venture-backed companies, I spent the last 10 years working on problems like this in about 25 countries. And it feels incredibly exciting what can be achieved in this space. One of the reasons RnDAO is focusing on building a collab tech cluster, first of all, is because DAOs are one of the most exciting innovations around Web3. And Arbitrum in particular is a place where decentralization is taken seriously. And DAOs, if they can be made to work, they can bring a lot of talent and innovation to the whole Web3 space. So it's almost meta in a sense that we want to figure out how to make really impactful clusters. If we do that on the collaboration tech cluster, that can enable other ones as well. And then why research? Well, half of the problem is asking the right question. And me as an engineer, I know how bad I was at that and understanding users and markets when I started and I got some help. So as excited as I am for the 5 papers that are going to get presented today, really this was just the first step in an overall vision to enable DAOs to create this sort of research and market understanding at scale. And that ultimately would fill in what the swarming strategy that RnDAO is so now famous for. Can you go to the next one? And yes, and yeah, like when we have this space of problem definition and thesis development is very vibrant, then we can build amazing ventures And by having a venture building model, we can very rapidly put all the right ventures in place to create this complementarity and bring the already mature existing high traction ones for the broader market in this cluster. So this is what makes this really, really exciting. It's just the first step of a major movement. And I want to pass to Drea to tell us how this is going on.
Hi guys, I'm Drea, and I'm all about deep customer empathy. I've done product user research and product design for years at small companies and big companies, and really sort of exploring how this approach supports innovation. Our goal for this fellowship was not to be, hey, this is your typical venture accelerator. You're building something, you want to build it fast. We wanted to create the fertile soil in which successful ventures grow. And on the next slide, you can see the way that we wanted to do this is to give these founders, these potential founders, the time to really explore the problem space. And the reason we want to do that is because, like Lino said, most startups fail because they build something no one wants, especially in Web3. And so to find out what people want, you have to understand the nooks and crannies of the problem, the customer, what the competition is, what the options are, what has worked, and how would you know if something's successful? And then all of this comes together to set you up so when you're exploring the solution space, you can move fast and move very effectively. So what did we explore? What did we learn in the fellowship? We started in the first month with understanding the users. Sort of how do you go and interview and talk to people in a way that they won't lie to you? How do you understand somebody's aspirations? How do you unpack their problems? The next month, we really explored understanding the space. You know, who are the players? Who's the competition? What's the size of the market and how many customers? What are the key concepts? And then the third month was really around understanding sort of success and how do you test that? So what would success look like? How can you be experimental when you're building the solution? Yeah, and I want to hand back to Yatan, partly because we also had an approach and a method to building this cohort.
Thank you, Drea. So we are very aware of the time restrictions when you are a founder. So we wanted to see, okay, how do we give the most succinct advice to get the most useful research? Yeah, Andrea took a lot of that heavy lifting. And then how do we design a program that's very, very lean, but still as useful as can be? So also having a lot of like ad hoc times when needed rather than filling the week with just hours that everybody has to attend. And finally, how to have others challenge your assumptions in a supportive way. So how to use the peer part to really, really give people more value. And the way we did this was Tuesdays, we had weekly workshops and learning about research, about other topics, sometimes bringing in people who would do a better job in a certain subject than one of us would. Then work time for the rest of the week, and also a meeting with the head mentor or with another mentor. And Thursday was about collaborating. So it was more of an open time. We call it swarm time, where we shared learnings, heard learnings, collaborated. Some of these were actually just completely fellow-led, and that was also quite useful. So enough about how we did it. And we do believe that it takes a village to incubate each idea. So we are building this community around this topic, which our bet is going to push the whole space forward. And without further ado, then, what we actually came here for, the fellows. So the first fellow to grace us with her presence is Milena from Co.Lab Berry, and her topic is compensation in early stage teams. I'm going to show a video that she prepared for this, and then we're going to go into Q&A with Milena. Video cue.
Hello, my name is Milena, and I'm going to walk you through compensation in early stage teams. But first, why? We're witnessing a major cultural shift in how people collaborate and take on projects. And this transition towards a more decentralized and distributed way of work requires the development of tools that align with this evolving culture. And the world today is changing faster, and that requires even more agility. Long-term careers in the same company have been progressively replaced by short-term gigs. And we thought that the answer to all of this are bounty systems, but they are built for short-term relationships in a risk-free environment. And that's okay as an initial step to engage with a project, but they do not scale and can't satisfy the needs of a long-term project. As founders, we want to have contributors that engage regularly, and we want to build a stable relationship with them. And bounty systems also don't acknowledge some of the contributors' needs, such as days off or security when they get sick. And generally, some safety and security once engaged with a project on a deeper level. And to understand the problems, we need to understand all the stakeholders. In this presentation, I'm only going to focus on Alice and Bob. Alice is a founder. She wants to build a project and a team, and she needs to maximize her runway. She's passionate for the project. She desires to create something meaningful and, of course, make potential profit for the organization. But she's frustrated because it's so difficult to offer competitive salaries, and that hinders the formation of a strong team. And on the other side, we have Bob. Bob is a core contributor. He wants to advance on the project. He wants long-term commitment. He's also passionate and desires to contribute to something bigger than himself. And he wants recognition, rewards, financial compensation, ownership, status, reputation. And his frustration is lack of transparency on financial distribution and ownership distribution. And he feels discomfort to negotiate his compensation, but he inevitably needs to because there's no other way. So balancing the team needs and maximizing runaway to a large extent defines the success or failure of the project. And to a large extent, the answer to this balance is co-ownership and giving power and autonomy to the contributors. And this way, we also give them a sense of belonging. So we need a solution that takes into consideration the needs of the contributors. It strives for intrinsic motivation. It minimizes monetary expenses so that the team has enough time to build and make the project. In this paper, I take all of these considerations and propose a solution which aligns the incentives of all stakeholders. It is flexible and adaptable. It ensures longevity for the project. It is mathematically backed, and it introduces fairness in the process while leveraging on Web3 technology. And the solution is Co.Lab. Co.Lab offers transparency in compensation for fostering trust and equality. It harnesses collective intelligence through peer-to-peer assessment with low admin, good UX, mathematical improvements to the current solutions that we have. It implements minimum viable salary for meeting contributors' basic needs. It embraces co-ownership to align the incentives and leverages on Web3 technology for enhancing trust and fairness. Thank you, and if you want to know more, read my paper and reach out.
Well done. Super interesting. Okay, folks. Are there any questions? I don't see any questions yet in the chat. Anybody? Humberto has a good key one. Next steps for this research. Where do you think you're going? And then I'll pull up Chris.
Thank you for the question. Well, first of all, the way that I want to build this is that I want to start using this model from day one, even before there is any technology, and build it with contributors actively. For that, I need very little funding because that's the whole point of the model, right? It minimizes expenses and also contributors to help me out do that.
Sounds good. Okay, Chris, what's your question?
Yeah, I was thinking in terms of the minimum viable salary, what do you think are the pros and cons of using that kind of a model within a DAO or within a organization?
Right, thank you. Well, currently the way that people start contributing to a DAO is by working for free for months, and 6 to 9 from the people that I talk to. So The first thing that, in my opinion, is a pro is inclusivity. So now we can onboard people who can't afford not work for 6 to 9 months or more. We also will have our contributors being way more productive because they're not going to struggle with money and stress out about that. The con, obviously, is budget constraints. So if the project has very little funding, we need a lot of transparency in the team, what money is actually available and how they can be distributed. And I'd say that here we have the question of equity versus equality, right? And in that case, we focus on equality because even though I don't necessarily agree that in different locations, people need different amount of money to live, it is inevitably the current reality. So hope that answers the question.
It does. Awesome. We have one other question. I'll ask if you have a quick answer to it. How is the MVS determined or selected? Like, do you have something in the algorithm that says, okay, this is what the minimum viable salary should be?
Well, the way that I've described it in the paper is that AI can definitely help a lot with that, to figure out market rate and percentage of that as minimum viable salary. But my opinion is that it needs to be self-stated because we just, as humans, have a lot of different financial contexts, and a lot of people who are working on different projects have alternative income streams, etc. And they actually don't need, it's a zero. For others, it's more. So as of now, the way that I'm thinking about it is self-state and then going through a proposal stage with the rest of the teams so that people are actually aligned.
Awesome. That sounds good. John Kennedy has a great question in the chat, but let's move on to the Milena, I'll let you answer that in the chat and let's move on to our next fellow.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Milena. So that brings us to our next fellow, and our next fellow is Dominik, who I always had to call in from Bangkok, so it was always nighttime for the whole thing. So thank you for that. And his topic is From Chaos to Clarity: Proposal Evaluations in Web3 Grant Programs.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dominik, and in the last 3 months, I have been investigating within the Arbitrum Co.Lab Fellowship why the evaluation process of proposals in Web3 grant programs often fails to identify the best projects. And in this short presentation, I give you an overview of my findings. So first, why did I do this and why is it important? Well, there's a lot of money at stake, and since grants play an important role in the growth of blockchain ecosystems, it would be disastrous if we distribute the available funds to projects that have no real impact. For example, we already see that a large number of projects are no longer active 1 year after funding. So what is the problem here? First, we need to make a brief distinction. On the one hand, there are programs that are more community-driven, means the proposal evaluation and also the selection process lies in the hands of the community. And on the other hand, there are what I call expert-led programs where this process lies within a selected or elected group of experts. The challenge here, can be narrowed down to the following. Expert-led programs are often overwhelmed with the number of proposals, so these systems don't really scale, while community-driven programs, the more complex the projects, the less the majority of the community is able to evaluate the projects. As a result, when evaluations are not reliable, the proposal selection tends to become kind of a popularity contest, means known teams are favored and new teams and ideas have a hard time getting funds, which does not necessarily contribute to the desired innovation. So what can we do next to solve that challenge? In the paper, I describe an approach that could be used to improve the evaluations in the long term. I call it a reputation-based review system, and this method aims to identify reviewers who have provided reliable reviews in the past and give them more weight in subsequent rounds, which should lead to a better selection of projects. In the last minute, I want to zoom out a little bit and look at the big picture here, because reliable evaluations are not just a problem of grant programs, but a general problem in our digital world at times when artificial intelligence is simplifying and almost infinitely scaling up the creation of content. It has never been more difficult to recognize the credibility of information and its sources, which makes the search for methods to identify trustworthy information and reliable reviews more important than ever. If you look at other industries, briefly, we can see some parallels. In e-commerce, we are dealing with a large number of fake reviews. In academia, an often non-transparent review process undermines scientific work. So the list can go on. But to wrap it up, the outlined approach requires further investigation, but the potential impact of such a solution in this area can be profound for Web3 programs and far beyond. That's for now. I'm happy to get in touch and discuss it even more. Thank you.
Fantastic. I've restarted a thread for questions for Dominik. I'd love to hear if anybody has some. I'm super curious personally. One of the things that, oh, here, awesome, this is a good one. So tell us a little bit more about the elements that you see envision in that reputation system. What are some of the key aspects that you need to include?
Well, yeah, first of all, we need to ask, like, what do we want to solve? So we want to make sure that we choose the right projects, and a reputation system in itself can help us doing it in a way that we reassess previous evaluations and therefore being able to identify those who actually helped to find the good projects in the past, and therefore help us, or like make it more likely to identify the projects in the following rounds. And yeah.
Awesome. Sounds good. Chris asks, what do you see as sort of the challenge in getting this started and setting up a reputation system?
Well, in order to identify persons or like to give reputation to persons, we need a track record. So to start a reputation system, it either takes time because we need to build that track record, or we need access to previous data. So it's important for programs to start collecting like structured data, like who evaluated what and how, so we can reassess that afterwards and in order to identify those who actually made good predictions.
Excellent. Good question from Sean. There's existing reputation systems being developed today. This is a good question because I know that Dominik has been seeing a lot of the churn that's out there. What's unique about the trust level approach?
Well, I would say at this stage, it's still very experimental. So it's not that I have something developed that is in place. It's like this approach or idea comes more from a personal experience in grant programs that I have participated in, and just, yeah, being able to, like, I was able to have a look at data and trying to, find find actually a process to use their data in order to find those people who did good reviews in the past and put it into a model that makes better predictions of it makes it easier to identify those who have actually higher likelihood of implementing their projects successfully.
Do you have
it's still experimental at this stage.
Right. So a lot of it is about then collecting the data. Humberto asks, do you have in mind any partnerships or alliances that could take this research and make it tangible?
Well, I think at this stage, what's important is to be able to assess or analyze grant programs, to have access to data in order to kind of evaluate my own approach. And there are like some projects like Karma Gap that just started like a few months ago that kind of start building something to manage grant programs on a more structured way. Some like a reviewing system or like a reputation system can probably improve that. So that's one potential.
I love that. I think one of the things that we're really passionate about in RnDAO is how do you build the composable and modular systems, because we have so much complexity.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Your time is up. Thank you so much, Dominik.
Great questions. Thank you.
Thanks for the questions.
And next up is Artem. It is topic enhanced sense making and deliberation for governance professionals. The video.
Hi everyone, my name is Artem, and this is a short summary of my research called Before the Proposal, which shows that sense-making is the most underserved need in governance. Sense-making can be defined as the collaborative process of developing shared understanding and framing complex issues. Our environment gets increasingly complex while our sense-making capabilities are lagging behind. This growing gap leads to apathy, resignation, or oversimplifying narratives. If we don't invest enough time in sense-making, don't grow cognitively, don't develop delegation systems, our sense-making becomes less and less adequate until something bad happens unexpectedly. But first, let's talk about decision-making in general. Aviva Vadia suggested that wise decision systems must be competent, aligned, and robust. A wise decision system should be skilled at identifying and evaluating options, aligning across conflicting values, and remaining resilient in the face of real-world complexity. DAOs need prioritization frameworks to make decisions. However, only 55 of those analyzed by Lavande had a formal mission statement, vision, values, or public roadmap. And KPIs were implemented only at 40% of DAOs. There is usually plenty of top-down communication, but limited communication from community to the core team. As a result, a lot of DAOs don't have a clear shared purpose and fail to capture community insights. All this can be framed as collective sense-making, and its quality largely depends on the facilitation. But what are the actual struggles and pain points that need to be addressed? Over the last 2 months, I've interviewed around 15 practitioners and created this map of the decision-making process based on those interviews. I found that facilitation of sense-making takes too much time and effort, normally 1 to 2 months of hard work to engage more people and process their inputs. This limits the agility and effectiveness of DAOs in defining direction and making decisions. The decision-making process can be roughly described as 4 distinct stages that involve specific stakeholders and jobs to be done. And in DAOs, these early stages probably rely on manual facilitation skills too much, which can make capturing the insights of members with high context problematic. I also discovered that during the initial sense-making, knowledge management can create limitations. Governance leads often lack the sufficient skills or experience in facilitation. Sense-making can be hard to do for external stakeholders like consultants, and also people tend to avoid conflicts. During the validation stage, reaching out to delegates can be tricky. especially in DAOs smaller than 5,000 members. And there's often a dilemma of wisdom versus popularity in public discussions. People don't share the hard truth. On the other hand, low engagement leads to only 10% who usually fill out the forms or participate in the forum discussions. And processing of all that input from surveys and interviews takes a lot of time. Fragmented communities can be hard to engage, and there's also need to assign different weight to different opinions. I also interviewed a number of facilitators, and this is one of my favorite quotes. It's often the outliers of the group that is actually the point of most interest and something that moves the group forward with a decision. But with multiple layers of decision-making that play into the middle, we can get further and further away from the actual truth of the group's thoughts and frustrations. So I've also tried to create a map of the space using so-called wordly mapping. The idea is to describe the landscape using 2 dimensions, the place in the supply chain and the maturity of innovation. So commodity tools like Zoom, Miro, or Discord or Discourse don't work really well because only a few people talk or add stickers or comments while others listen or read passively and withhold their opinions. And in Web3 tooling, there is a notable bias towards voting mechanisms, which represent the final stage of decision-making process, while sense-making is usually done manually and is hard to scale. I think DAOs are kind of arrogant because they don't use most of the solutions that have been developed in, for instance, deliberative democracy movement, like citizen engagement, civic tech. And on the other hand, the frameworks that have been developed for sense-making, like sociocracy or Connevin. Based on my research, the most impactful governance tools will address the problems of collective sense-making that happens before the proposal by making facilitation much easier, which is impossible without leveraging machine learning or AI. Generative AI can transform sense-making and deliberation, which form the real iceberg of decision-making. Such systems can be used to identify and reward responses that can bridge divides. They can also be incredibly efficient at getting the right people involved or surfacing community insights to make people feel heard and respected when they see their responses incorporated into the decisions. Such systems will expand the online collaboration stack, complementing existing use cases with generative collective intelligence. And one last thing. I think there is a significant opportunity for developing shared knowledge and documentation practice that can accelerate the ecosystem of innovation and foster accountability. Aviva Vadia proposed to use so-called process cards and run reports that can help us move forward and develop interoperable design, open evaluation, and reach wider adoption of democratic process. So let's double down on sense-making. Let's experiment as much as possible, and let's share the results with each other. Thank you very much for your attention.
Great, Prezzo. Artem has a great answer to one of the questions, which is what resources would you use to test your hypothesis? But let me take the popular question which is when harmonica?
Q2, 24.
Q2. Nice quick answer. One more. Are there any DAOs using AI sense making today? Like, what are some of the more interesting tools out there in practice?
I guess you can think of Polis as a almost well-known sense-making tool, deliberation tool. It's using machine learning. It's not using large language model, but I know that quite a few DAOs, including RnDAO, are using Polis. I think that Othello is planning to add generative AI features. So I know that Arbitrum used Othello for their program in September. So, hopefully we'll be able to use Othello with powered by AI soon.
Interesting.
I've never heard of anyone using Remesh. By the way, Remesh is a very interesting product that is using generative AI to facilitate deliberation with customers. I think they're more focused on marketing purposes, but I also know that they've been used by UN in some third world countries, and I don't understand why DAOs are not using tools like that.
I like Humberto called out on your critique of DAOs not using what's on there today, which is super powerful.
The call to partner and learn from the deliberative democracy movement.
That sounds good. We have 1 minute, so for one more question. Humberto asked for a link to Remesh, which I think is not Rematch, but it's a super interesting one. Savannah asked if there's a list somewhere of these tools. A lot of these names are new to her.
Well, I'm going to publish a separate blog post. Right now, the map is only available in my paper, which is published on the Monica blog, and I can share the link with you. But I'm planning to publish a more detailed post with the full description of all the tools from this map.
That will be fantastic. Thank you. Thank you a ton. Thanks, Artem.
Thank you very much.
So we are halfway, and we are now hearing from our next fellow, who is Humberto. And his topic, how can Web3 power microcredits through co-ownership? Cue video. Oh.
Hola, my name is Humberto Beso Huerta, and I am a researcher within the Co.Lab Fellowship program. Today, I'm presenting you my research, which is called DeFi versus loan sharks. This presentation covers 4 aspects: the problem, the opportunity, guidelines for a solution, and read the article. The problem: the financial sector is disconnected from reality, neglects 90% of all businesses, leaving them to credits of 1% daily interest. Some context: in Mexico, regulated credit is expensive, as you can see here, going rates from 70 to 127%. Imagine the non-regulated ones. Micro businesses represent over 90% of the local economic units of Mexico and Latin America. Only in Mexico, there are 4.2 million micro businesses, and over 52% of these can't access regulated credits because they live in a systemic fragility. Unexpected expenses, health issues, the mafia, poor financial literacy, and more makes them prompt to fail paying on time, thus tagging them with a negative credit history, and with it, they say bye-bye to regulated credits. They are left behind. With negative credit history, even if micro businesses are crucial to the economy, they are neglected to the predatory interest rates of 1% a day from loan sharks. Not being enough, defaulting with loan sharks can lead to violence and threats often linked to organized crime, as you can see here. But are loan sharks the problem? Loan sharks adapted to the context of the micro businesses. Even with 3 to 15 times higher interest rates, loan sharks managed to halt their business with a default rate of about 5%. How do they do this? They removed all of the other blockers. Can DeFi adapt to and come to the rescue? The opportunity. The blockchain technology has been widely recognized by its characteristic of removing or reducing intermediaries. Finding a reliable way to bring DeFi to micro businesses is key. Just within 2024's crypto bull run, the DeFi rates are about 31 times cheaper than the local Mexican loan sharks. Web3 lenders require a trust mechanism to assess risk and interest rates, so they can lend to local business owners. In turn, the local business owners require 2 things to borrow from Web3 lenders. First, an easy and quick way to borrow. Second, an easy way to pay back, either in crypto or in fiat. The local business owner starts his journey by opening a self-custodial decentralized identity. This DID will aggregate the different verifiable credentials associated to the borrower. The verifiable credentials, also known as VCs, come from two types of oracles, in real-life oracles and digital oracles. With the DID, the business owner can issue the VCs she has available, for example, her national ID, phone number, proof of home and business address, and Google Maps locations of her business. The issued attestations need to be verified. For this, algorithms, AI, and an agent on the ground are employed. The verification of these credentials is what gives an initial credit score. Now, the business owner can borrow, and as her credit is in crypto, she will receive on-chain attestations from her credit history. Finally, to tackle the systemic fragility of the borrowers, a part of the profits should be used to delegate collateral to each borrower. The delegated collateral locked to each borrower has two main functions. First, allow the borrower to progressively access cheaper credits, and second, safeguard lenders when borrowers default. If you want to know more about how this challenge can be tackled through digital and real-life oracles that trigger smart contracts and on-the-ground actions, you have to read the paper. Thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation and you are hooked to solve this problem with me.
Awesome. Ton of fun. Thanks very much, Humberto. So we have a thread. I love that there's a lot of questions for Artem. Marcelo has a good one. Seems like loan sharks are to credit what Bitcoin miners are to the electric grid. They pull it out. That's a funny example. Do you buy that connection? What analogy would you use for the loan sharks that you see in this ecosystem?
Well, yeah, loan sharks are enabling credit for people that otherwise they wouldn't have. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe Bitcoin miners are necessary so that we have Bitcoin.
To pull that in.
That might be the relation. But
interesting. One of the questions that we had when we were talking about this is that it feels like the agents on the ground are the most difficult piece to build and actually onboard. So how scalable do you see those agents on the ground, and what are some of the problems that we don't notice?
Well, there are already all these agents on the ground. It's not about creating new ones, but onboarding them. So and yesterday I was talking to one of those, and he gave me this idea that he shared this idea of imagine the Uber Eats and the Rappi and all these gig work for delivering food, but instead of delivering food, going to open credits for businesses and recovering credit to them. So all of them are already out there. They have already their infrastructure to arrive to the clients. They already know the city. They already know the businesses. They just need to be onboarded, and there are ways for doing that. And we are experimenting currently with one financial institution.
Oh, that's an awesome idea. Adding that value on top of what they're already doing. Carlos asks, disrupting these black markets in emerging economies can be a risk, right? Just like you start to push on them and they start to see you as a threat. Is this an obstacle for the agents on the ground? What are you thinking about getting around that?
Well, depend on where do we see the risk. If for me, the more visual or more tangible risk is for the people that is behind the project that is recognizable, because the risk is for the mafia, we are taking out the market from the mafia. So it is not a risk for the lender because it's unknown person, Web3 person, but the risk is for us pushing this. And we have ways of managing that.
Okay. Have you considered the Cello experiment in Colombia? With the illegal immigrants? It seems related.
With the what?
The cello experiment. This is Marcelo. Do you want to?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe Marcelo, do you want to unmute and clarify the question?
Thank you, Humberto. Cello had an experiment in Colombia, in Bogota, with Venezuelan illegal immigrants. They're unbanked, and they had some money, but they cannot use the financial system of Colombia. So I think it was James. I think at the beginning it was not Cello, it was James, and he developed some sort of credit pool where they provided credit for a couple of people that are willing by the time to work in the delivery system. And then after paying back the loan, the onboarding was they will be teached about how to provide credit for others. And like there is this paper from James where he said that they started with $20,000 and at the end of the first year they have over $200,000 in the pool, just coming from like people within the system.
Yeah, those are like the different experiments going on. But I think it depends
Sorry,
on the
Humberto. Marcelo, very sorry to interrupt you here. We have to move forward because we have one more fellow. But this
Thank
was
you.
already very engaging, so thank you, Humberto, and for all the questions, Andrea. So next up, last but not least, it's Rich, unlocking the power of off-chain data for better collaboration.
My name is Rich Cuellar Lopez, founder of Armada, the Web3 social CRM, and I'd like to talk to you about leveraging off-chain data to unlock new forms of contributions. And first, I'd like to start with 30,000-foot view. And as a reminder, this Web3 space is really about competition. It's about putting out a better product. It's about growth above all. So much so you have projects like Optimism, Arbitrum, Polygon. They are all giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to attract the best talent and contributions. You have Uniswap, who took a bulk of their token value, around $4 billion worth, and put it in a treasury for their foundation to get the best contributions. You have MakerDAO, who aims to have their product proliferate across all different ecosystems in what they call Endgame, by shutting down their core team and giving the product away to community contributors. These are industry-leading organizations that have set the tone for progressive decentralization, but growth above all while defaulting to working in public. However, this is really difficult, and so I'd like to zoom in a little bit to see the terrain. We've illustrated here 3 people, Alice, Bob, Carol. Alice is a core team member. We really focus on Alice because they're doing this full time, they're usually salaried, they may have tokens, but they're trying to execute on deliverables on a daily basis. They're focused on marketing campaigns, sales, funnels, strategic partnerships that require attention to detail. And they're really just trying to get shit done. But they have people like Bob, community members who are in their ear. Now, Bob, he may be involved in several projects. This is his hobby. He may have a specialized skill, but he knows that he could take that specialized skill somewhere else. And so he wants to add some value. He wants to grow the project, and usually he has financial incentive to do so. He may hold tokens as well. So he knows if the project does well, he does well. And when you look at Carol really holds the vision for the product, but they know they can't be everywhere all at once. So they're really trusting that Alice and Bob can work together so the project can grow. Where does this fall apart? It's really about communication. And it's about turning this pain point on the left, where you have the core team, someone like Alice, who's trying to focus. And then you have the community, people like Bob, who may be in their ear. And sometimes they could just adding noise, like price action, things like that. But sometimes they're adding material value or just asking real questions like, what are the upcoming growth prospects? They know that if there are no real prospects, they can just up and leave and go to a more promising project. They may have connections to other great projects that can make great contributions. And so they want to make that introduction. They also just may show up and say, how can I add value? Where's the data? Where's the context? So at Armada, we're really focused on turning this pain point to a superpower and really joining the core team and community in a material way. And we believe this can be done with tools like Armada. Armada is really about leveraging off-chain data. And so we suggest growth in new ways, unique crypto native ways, such as industry-leading referral programs that are just better than these gamified point problems that you may just farm. You have token gating, so core team members like Alice can actually do quality control over what data is being shared and ultimately how it's being used. You might also have automated data updates, so Alice never has to create a manual transparency report or enter a data request. It's all just being pushed to the community. So these are a couple of ways in which Armada is really looking to leverage off-chain data to solve this problem. Thank you.
awesome overview. I have a thread in the chat. People should go ahead and add more questions. I'm going to kick off with one that we had, which is really, that sounds like it's a lot about the referral, and that those are really a crux in this model. How do you see the referral program working, and what are the upsides and downsides?
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways that it can be designed by a moderator, but I've done this before in Web2 program companies. And really the issue with these referral programs getting games is that you have burner accounts, or you have people who actually turn this into like affiliate channels. And, you know, anytime there's money involved, there's going to be some kind of trying to tease out some amount of money, but also work with others to get more of that money. And, you know, this doesn't get completely solved with crypto, but like just having some type of consistent address that can be token gated with a governance token, or, you know, some type of utility token, you know, having a history, something like what Dominik talked about with reputation. These are all things that really aren't possible with email addresses. And because you have that, you know, history with your identifying credentials, it's now possible. You know, you could also have mutual benefits where it helps the person who's referring as well as the person who's referred. And it's just taking the, you know, best practices of what has been done before, but, you know, just really blocking those processes that, you know, try and game referral systems. And Armada is excited about that one particular feature.
I'm going to layer in, I'm going to pull a question with from one of the earlier threads, which is around how critical is doxing then? Like when you talk about the history, how much of that history is, you know, what we consider to be like your personal information, and how much of it is just like the history? And what are some of the tools that you used?
Yeah, we're building Armada to be unopinionated about this. So it's really just, you know, what the moderator, and so the way we structure it is kind of like a SaaS product. And so a decision maker in a DAO or a company, they can come in and say, hey, we want the gates completely down. Anyone can come in. They don't have to have any history. They can make a contribution. We don't care how they get paid or where they're coming from. Or you can have, you know, a moderator say, hey, we want you to show some amount of history, whether you're doxed or anon, or you need to have this many tokens. And that can actually be an on-chain parameter. But this is really something that, you know, at least me personally, I'm unopinionated about it. I think it's really in the hand of the user to decide, you know, what kind of sharing and collaboration they have the appetite for.
Nice, like sort of building Armada as a platform with that flexibility rather than forcing things down.
Every project is different, right? They're looking to get different things, and we're building it in that way.
Fantastic.
All right. Thank you, Rich.